Today, we're jumping straight into, well, a real political earthquake in American history, the election of 1828.
It really was transformative.
Yeah.
And to get it, you have to picture the 1820s.
Right. What was going on?
Well, the U.S. was growing like crazy. Westward expansion, new states popping up, agriculture booming.
Yeah.
But beneath that surface,
Things were shifting.
big time. You had growing economic divides, the beginnings of industry changing cities, and maybe the biggest thing, this rising sense of the common man. You know, ordinary folks demanding a voice.
Yeah, that whole era of good feelings after the war at 1812, that was definitely over.
Completely gone. Political unity just fractured, became more democratic, sure, but also, frankly, a lot angrier.
And right in the middle of this storm, you've got these two figures, polar opposites almost, battling for the presidency.
You really do. First, John Quincy Adams. He's the incumbent president, son of another president, John Adams. A brilliant diplomat, really sharp guy.
And he believed in a strong federal role, right?
Absolutely. He wanted government investment in infrastructure, education, things to build up the nation. Very much an established intellectual kind of leader.
But that background kind of worked against him too, didn't it?
It did. He started getting painted as, well, cold, elitist, maybe a bit out of touch with regular Americans.
And then there's Andrew Jackson.
The total contrast.
Yeah.
War hero, Battle of New Orleans, came up from the frontier. He became this powerful symbol of the self-made common man.
And his message was different.
Very different. He was suspicious of the established powers, the perceived aristocracy.
Yeah.
He basically said, let's get power back to the ordinary people. It was a message that really resonated.
So it's Harvard versus the frontier almost. Book learning versus, I don't know, gut instinct.
That's a good way to put it. A real clash of background styles and core beliefs about who should run the country.
And all this set the stage for, well, maybe one of the nastiest, most personal campaigns America had ever seen.
Oh, absolutely. Just brutal.
Okay, so let's dig into one of the big reasons for all that bitterness. The shadow of the 1824 election and this thing called the corrupt bargain.
Right, you really can't understand 1828 without 1824. The accusation was this. Jackson got the most popular votes and the most electoral votes, but not a majority.
So it went to the House of Representatives?
Exactly. And there, Henry Clay, who was also a candidate and Speaker of the House, threw his support behind Adams. Adams wins, and then, surprise, surprise, Adams appoints Clay as his Secretary of State.
Looks like a quid pro quo.
That's exactly how Jackson's supporters framed it. They hammered this constantly for 4 years. Adams wasn't legitimate. He was part of a corrupt elite deal that stole the election from the People's Choice Jackson.
So that corrupt bargain narrative just festered.
It became their main rallying cry. It perfectly played into this idea of insiders versus the common man.
And the 1828 campaign itself just descended into, well, mudslinging doesn't quite capture it, does it? The personal attacks were wild.
Astonishing, really. Jackson took incredible heat. They called him dangerous, ignorant, a violent thug. They brought up his duels, his military executions.
Trying to paint him as unfit, too emotional, too volatile for the presidency.
And then it got deeply personal. The attacks on his marriage, specifically about his wife Rachel and the circumstances of her previous divorce, that was particularly nasty.
Claiming she was still married when she married Jackson, essentially calling her an adulteress and him.
It was vicious.
Yeah.
And it reportedly devastated Rachel Jackson. It went way beyond policy disagreements.
Yeah, but Adams didn't exactly get a free pass either, did he?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The Jacksonians hit back hard. Adams was painted as this decadent aristocrat, totally aloof, snobby, lived in luxury, didn't understand the common man.
And didn't they accuse him of, like, misusing public funds? Putting a pool table in the White House or something?
Yeah, the infamous billiard table, portrayed as gambling with taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And then the completely outrageous story.
The Russian Tsar story.
Yes. Accusing Adams, when he was ambassador to Russia years earlier, of procuring an American girl for the Tsar's pleasure. Just utterly fabricated and scandalous.
Wow. So this mudslinging, these character assassinations, that really defined the campaign.
It became the defining feature, you could argue. It shifted focus from maybe substantive issues onto just tearing down the opponent personally. And it kind of set a template, didn't it?
It certainly feels familiar sometimes, but alongside all this negativity, something else was happening, something new in how campaigns were run.
Absolutely. This is really the birth of mass campaigning. Modern tactics start to emerge.
What kinds of things are we talking about?
You start seeing organized rallies, huge parades, campaign songs, buttons, slogans, old hickories for Jackson. And partisan newspapers went into overdrive.
Like propaganda machines for each side?
Pretty much. They weren't pretending to be objective. They were there to promote their candidate and attack the other guy. It was about mobilizing voters on a mass scale we hadn't really seen before.
And this worked. Got people fired up.
Definitely. It really energized ordinary Americans, pulled them into the political drama. And crucially, this was happening just as more people could actually vote.
Ah, right. Property requirements for voting were disappearing in a lot of states.
Exactly. So the electorate, the number of potential voters, expanded dramatically between 1824 and 1828. Mostly white men, of course, but still a huge shift.
So you have these new campaign tactics reaching a much larger group of voters who are feeling their political power for the first time.
Precisely. It showed that popular opinion was becoming a major force. The old system, where maybe a few elites could quietly manage things, that was really breaking down. The voice of the broader public mattered now.
And the results showed it, didn't they? It wasn't close.
Not at all. Jackson won decisively, something like 56% of the popular vote, which was huge then. And a big electoral college win, 178 to Adams' 83.
So more than just Jackson winning, this felt like a revolution.
In a political sense, yes. It felt like a real shift in power, away from that older East Coast, more established elite.
Towards this new Jacksonian democracy, representing the common man.
That was the idea. And this election really cemented the creation of a new political party, the Democratic Party, built around Jackson. And that very idea of representing the common man's interests, it became a dominant force.
So 1828 wasn't just a one-off slugfest. It left a lasting mark on American politics.
Oh, permanently. The way campaigns were run changed for good. That populist style, appealing directly to the masses, became much more common.
And the mudslinging?
Sadly, yeah. That seemed to become a standard, almost expected part of the toolkit. We also saw the beginnings of more organized, well, political machines.
Ways to get the vote out, organize supporters efficiently.
Exactly. Getting more systematic about winning elections. And the whole idea of a presidential election became this huge national spectacle, engaging way more people than before.
It wasn't just for the political junkies anymore.
Right. It became part of the national conversation, something everyone was talking about.
And Jackson's presidency itself carried that same energy forward, right? Challenging institutions.
It absolutely did. He took on the national bank, championed the idea of the president representing the will of the people directly. Very populist.
But also controversial. Accusations of acting like a king, maybe pushing the boundaries of presidential power.
Definitely controversial. His presidency raised big questions about executive power, about treatment of Native Americans with the Indian Removal Act, about respecting checks and balances. It wasn't simple.
No, clearly not. But looking back, that election, 1828, it really does feel like a hinge point.
Absolutely pivotal.
With
Fundamentally changed the political landscape, ushered in this era of mass democracy with all its energy, its conflicts, and its rough edges.
So wrapping up, 1828, intense conflict, the rise of the common man in politics, and the dawn of modern, often pretty nasty campaigning.
That sums it up pretty well. A true turning point.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners. Thinking about 1828, the personalities, the accusations, the campaign tactics, that whole idea of the common man versus the elite, how much of that still feels relevant today?
Yeah, what echoes of that 1828 political street fight do you still see in American politics now? And what might that tell us about how democracy changes, or maybe how some struggles for power just endure?
Something to think about.